A while ago I reviewed a DJ style turntable that cost £89 and I was surprised at how well it performed. It turned out really to be a pretty good deal for a record player that had a moving magnet cartridge. Now you can of course get cheaper record players, but they tend to have ceramic cartridges. Now personally, I just draw the line at moving magnet. If you've got a modern day record player with a ceramic cartridge in it and you like it, well, I'm happy that you're happy. But for me, when I'm spending my money, it's MM or nothing. And if you're on a budget and you do want a turntable with a moving magnet cartridge, it does seem like the price of the cheapest ones is getting lower, because here in the UK, at the time of recording, which is the 3rd of August 2021, Costco online are selling a LENCO L-30 with a moving magnet cartridge for £79.99. That's including delivery, and that's almost £20 cheaper than the Amazon UK price. Of course, I should also factor in here that to shop at Costco online, you do need to be a member, and membership costs money, but perhaps if you're not a member, you do know someone who could get it for you. Now, they are doing a range of models, but you've got to be careful. Read the details. There's one of these that costs £10 more, but it actually uses the cheaper ceramic cartridge system. The reason for the increase in price is because that one has speakers in the legs. I can't imagine those sounding too great. I'd rather pay £10 less, get the better pickup, but of course I need also then to link it up with some powered speakers. But the question that I'm here today to try and answer is, if you spend £80 on a turntable that has a moving magnet cartridge, how good a turntable do you get for your money? Well, let's find out. Okay, now this is not the LENCO of old. It says here the 75th anniversary of LENCO. Well, the name has been going that long, but it's changed hands a number of times. So just to kind of ignore that part of it, we're just going to look at it on its own without the history that goes along with it. And I've got to say, it doesn't look too bad from the picture that's on here. We do have a few specs down the bottom that I just want to show you. Okay, now starting off at the top here, it mentions the cartridge that's included is from Audio-Technica. And this is a budget cartridge, and yet it will outperform cartridges that cost a heck of a lot more in many cases. So the fact that they've included this means that we've got a potential here for a really good sounding record player at a low price. Now, of course, 33 and 45 RPM only. If you see a turntable that does 78 as well as those, it's more than likely a ceramic cartridge on there. We've got a USB output on here for recording the records onto your computer. I don't know whether it'll come with software for that. We'll have a look. It's belt drive. That should cut down on rumble, but of course you wouldn't expect direct drive on a turntable of this price. RCA output, of course, but I suppose what that means is that it's not expecting you to use a phono preamp, or phono I should say preamp. It's probably putting line level out of the back. Auto stop is something that I very much appreciate in a turntable. The fact it's got an MDF cabinet, well, we did have that plastic turntable at £89, and that had resonance issues. If you tapped on it, it would echo through the whole thing, so the MDF cabinet might be a positive here. And of course we've got a dust cover and a plug on it. That's enough of this. Let's get inside. Right, well, I managed to get it out of there upside down, so let's flip it over. Right, so the dust cover's not attached to start with. We've got the slip mat in there as well. And in this bag we've got a cleaning cloth, the instruction booklet, an RCA stereo lead, USB A to B lead, and a 45 RPM adapter. The power adapter is inside here, and it's a little external wall wart. We've got a couple of adapters in there. That's the UK one, and oops, quite a small thing this. It outputs 12 volts at 1 amp, and I don't know if there's really enough lead there. Let's just have a look. A lot of the times they tend to not supply enough cable with these things. Yeah, it's a little bit on the short side, that, but it'll do. I mean, I'm concerned about if you've got a record player on a top somewhere and you've got to have the wire run all the way down to the plug on the floor. That's probably not going to reach it, but you can always use the extension lead, of course. Okay, let's have a good look at this. It feels quite solid so far. It doesn't have any creaks to it. Yeah, that's a lot more solid than that £89 one. That had that echo kind of sound, a big hollow sound to it when you tapped it. This one's a lot better. Let's just tip it up and have a look underneath here. Now, I don't know how well you can see this, but it says 45 PRM and 33 PRM there. I think that means RPM, and the idea would be you'd pop off these little caps here to adjust the speed of the motor, presumably. Now at the top here, it says made in China. Now we've got springy feet on there, which is good. So here we've got the RCA line level outputs. You can tell they're going to be line level because there's no ground connector next to them for sending this off to an external preamp. We've also got the USB output, 12 volt power in, and on off switch there as well. You can see here, if I move this, how the turntable and the arm are attached together, but they're also isolated from the MDF base. Now, they fooled me. On the front of the box this looked quite presentable. In fact, from a distance it looks alright, but once you get up close you can see this tone arm, it's just a plastic arm all the way through. All the way through, in fact, to the end here, to the weight on the back. That would normally be your counterweight that you would adjust up or down to get the balance of the arm right, but it's not adjustable because it's actually just a piece of plastic around a weight on the inside. Now I can see a screw in there. Perhaps that will allow me to actually adjust the weight. I'm going to have to read the manual for that, but yeah, it's a bit of trickery that, because it's designed to look like a proper counterweight, but it really is just a piece of plastic. Okay, there wasn't much point looking in the manual because first off we've got cautions about not using it underwater, the usual stuff, so that's not really information. That carries on all the way down here, just tells you how to unpack it with a couple of lines there at the bottom. There's a picture of the turntable, tells you what's included in it, how to listen to a record, which is that part there, which is basically just put the record on and put the needle on it, and then at the bottom it starts going into Audacity for the next couple of pages, and then goes into specs at the end there for the power supply. And it just suggests don't touch the stylus with your fingers and wipe the dust cover with a soft cloth. So I think you can see from that who this turntable is being aimed at. Very much just a beginner who wants to play records, who doesn't want to do any kind of adjustment, setting up, any of that business. They just want to get it out of the box, take the tape off the turntable, put the slip mat down and play a record with a minimum of fuss. They don't want to be adjusting counterbalances or angles of cartridges or any of that kind of business. So let's go ahead, let's just do that. Let's take the tape off, let's put it all together and see how well it performs. But if there are any issues with it, it seems like it's not the kind of turntable you could do much in the way of adjustment to get better performance out of it. Yeah, I've got to say, compared to that £89 DJ turntable, this one really does feel quite cheap in places. Of course, yes, it's a budget turntable, but for £10 more, that one felt like it had a heck of a lot more quality to it. This mechanism here, this all-in-one thing, I could imagine that turning up in other budget turntables that use a moving magnet cartridge. Now, I mentioned before how that ceramic cartridge turntable mechanism, the one that you see in the vast majority of those suitcase record players, is the same. It's very easy to identify. It probably cost them about $5 to make, even though they'll put it into turntables that cost well over $100 sometimes. Well, this one, I should imagine it's just as easy to spot. If this is something that is used by multiple companies, and I would imagine it will be, well, even if you were to put the cover on this, so you hide these two cutouts here so it becomes a little bit more difficult, you should be able to identify it from this arm because of the way it curves around here. It's got that straight out piece there and the three cutouts in the top there to make it look like a proper head shell. I think that would be the signature that I'd be looking for in one of these. If you see those three cutouts there, and then of course this part, it's all one piece. Here we've got the piece of plastic that holds the arm in place. That feels very flimsy and likely to snap off. We've got the switch for the 33 or 45 speed selector, another switch behind that which activates or deactivates the auto stop at the end of a record, and then we've got the lever which drops the arm down on the record. So if you see other turntables with the same configuration as this, I think you can safely assume you're going to get a very similar performance to the one that I'm going to get here today. So let's see what that's like. Now, there's a couple of specs in the manual I'm interested in checking for myself. It mentions the wow and flutter is going to be less than 0.35%. We'll look at that later. The one I want to look at now is for the cartridge. It uses an Audio-Technica AT3600L, and it mentions the optimum tracking force for that cartridge is between 2.5 and 3.5 grams. So let's see what it is on this turntable. Now, I've noticed the dampening on this means that the arm takes a little while for it to reach its maximum downward force. So we'll have to wait here a couple of seconds for this to register its final number. 3.23, I think. Oh no, 3. It's still going up. Okay, 3.25. I think we'll stick. Oh no, oh, just stop moving. Is that it? Is that all you've got? Final warning. 3, 2, 1, right, 3.26. So, oh. And just to get a second opinion, a second set of scales. There we go. Right, so 3.27 we got on the last one. Okay, that shows that these scales are in sync with one another because that one is reading 3.275. So there you go, 3.28 rounded up tracking force. And that is totally fine, it's not going to damage your records. I've realised that the on-off switch isn't in the most convenient position because to press it you have to close the lid and then reach over the top and feel for it, there it is, and then put the lid back up again when you want to operate the record player. But anyway, it's on now, so let's just have a quick listen. Okay, now things are sounding surprisingly good so far, but as I swap the records over I realised that I'll need to test out the auto stop function. So this time I made sure I switched that on and I put the arm down towards the end of the record. And the idea being once the stylus moves into the run out section, the record player should cut the power to the turntable motor. But it didn't, it just kept spinning, and this is why I insist on an auto stop, at least on all my record players. I don't want to hear this stylus bashing around at the end of a record like this. I don't know whether it's doing it any harm, but I'd imagine it's not doing it any good either. Now you can say, well, you should just get up and stop it manually. Of course I will do, that's all you can do in this case. If you're listening to a record that you're unfamiliar with, you don't know when the side's going to end until you hear that sound, so yeah, not really ideal. But I did notice that the thing just seems to be calibrated incorrectly. If you were to move the arm into the area where the label is on a record, it will auto stop then. It just doesn't do it in the position it's supposed to in the run out area. It does, however, work on 45, so perhaps this is something that you can calibrate. Maybe you can open up the case and twiddle something, but I don't know whether that's actually possible. The separation of the turntable and the tone arm to the plinth seems to work quite well. I can tap around on here without hearing anything coming through on the audio. And then of course with the dampened feet I can do quite a bit of banging around next to it. And it's not making the arm skip at all. Obviously if you hit it really hard you can get it to jump, but that's to be expected. But for normal use that's a lot better than the £89 turntable, which was really quite delicate. You had to be very careful near it to avoid either the sound being transmitted through the arm or the vibrations making the arm skip. Okay, so let's do a test on the speed and the wow and flutter. You might be able to hear a 3 kHz tone being played from the record. That's necessary for testing. So let's take a closer look at the meters over here. Right, so starting on the left, this is the speed, and I've set it to 1% at the top of the scale, so we're looking at the top row on there, so that's 1% at the top, 0 in the middle, and it's hovering around 0.5% fast. Now if we look on the flutter, the wow and flutter, well I've set that one to 0.3%, so we're looking at the bottom row on here, so that would be 0.3%, 0.2%, 0.1%, and that's where the needle's hovering around, so it's looking at around 0.1% wow and flutter. Now that's at 33 1/3, so let me change the speed and move the stylus across the record to the correct testing band. Okay, so we're moving on to 45 RPM now, and I haven't adjusted the scales at the bottom, so it's the same as before. And the results look pretty similar to before as well. We're running a little bit faster in 45 RPM. It's around about 0.7% fast there. Remember that would be adjustable if you could access those pots on the bass and twiddle them with a screwdriver. I'm sure you could get the speed better than that. And as far as the wow and flutter goes, much the same as before. Looking at the bottom row, hanging around 0.1% or thereabouts. While I was doing those tests then, I came to realise that this whole setup is a little bit frustrating. It's down to this clip that is supposed to hold the arm in position. As I mentioned earlier, it feels a little bit flimsy, but it just seems to get in the way as well. For example, if I was to put the arm down on the record now by moving the lever forward, if I move that out of the way, you can see I can't raise the lever back up again, so I have to push this back and pull that over there, and I also find it a little bit awkward getting to the speed adjustment. So all of these things here just conspire against one another. Let's see what's under one of these things. Oh, let's take them all off while we're here. Right, what have we got? Right, well, there's nothing behind that one, so I'll pop that back on. But these two, they seem to lead quite a long way in. I don't know if you can see that. There's a hole at the bottom there, but it's also been obscured with a bit of sponge, so you don't see a screw hole. You just can poke something down and hope that it's twisting something. So let's try it with 45, since I'm not going to be playing many of those anyway. I'll stick the pad back over 33. Right, well, this is definitely not the easiest thing to do, because you've got to have this balanced over the edge of a table, then reach up underneath while it's playing, but we'll give it a go. It's difficult to get it perfect because there's a delay after you've adjusted the screw, but I think I've got it closer there. We're still on 1% at the top and we're running just under, but it keeps moving. Oh, it's back up to 0 now, so yeah, that's probably as good as I'm going to get it now. It's on 0 at the moment anyway. It'll probably shift over time. While I'm here, I might as well adjust the 33 one as well. So there you go, that's pretty good. Dead on 0 again, so that's at 33 1/3 now, so there you have it. We've adjusted both speeds. Shows you that it's possible if you really want to do it. Well, I wasn't wrong. A couple of minutes after shooting that section, this little piece of plastic snapped off the end of that retaining hook. So now it looks like this. It's a little bit unsightly with that white broken off section there, but it does still do its job. It still holds the arm in position when it's on its rest, so I think I'll just colour that in with a Sharpie. I'll take that off there and we'll just do a quick sound demo. So I'll play a track off this album. This is Richard Hawton. I'll link to Richard's stuff in the video description. Right, let's have a listen. Now, digitising records isn't something that I tend to do, but let's just test it out for people who are interested in that feature. Now, as far as recording in Audacity, it just shows up as USB audio device, and you can see here when I drop the needle, that's the audio coming through. I've set the recording level manually myself. I think I've got it just a bit hot there, so I'd have to move that down a bit. But there you go. That's pretty much what you get. So I don't really know what else I can say about that. If you wanted to record over USB to a computer, yes, you can do it, and I'm sure it'll sound just fine. I'll have a listen back. If there's any issues, I'll let you know. Off camera and away from content matches, I've listened to quite a few records on this now, records that cover a variety of musical genres, and to sum up, I'm really very happy with the sound quality. I don't have any complaints about that side of things at all, especially considering the price of this record player. The areas, though, where it falls down are to do with the quality of the plastics and the ergonomics of the switches and levers. The fact that that arm retaining clip snapped off within the first hour of use, I don't know what I did to it, but I'd imagine that would happen to quite a few people as well. The fact that the auto stop doesn't auto stop on LPs on my machine is annoying, and I don't appreciate the visually deceptive fakery of that tone arm counterweight design. But putting those things to one side, yes, it does play records with a surprising level of competence. Whether or not, though, that's enough to outweigh the cons, well, of course, that would have to be down to the individual that was considering spending their own money on one of these. At least now you've got the information you need to make a more informed decision, so I'll just leave it there. That's it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching.